Prepare.
Prepare. That's it. Just one word, delivered straight from the Oval Office, looking directly at the American people.
And this wasn't, some off-the-cuff remark.
No, not at all. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't standard political talk. This was a sitting president of the United States delivering a deliberate, very calculated signal.
A signal that
That the rules are about to change.
That the ground beneath Washington, D.C. is about to shift. Fundamentally.
It felt like a shock signal, an alarm bell, and everything that followed. I mean, it proved it wasn't just theater.
Right. This was a statement carrying real institutional weight. It implies that he knew something was already moving behind the scenes.
So this isn't about panic. It's calculated. It's about a structural change to the very foundations of American democracy.
And here is the devastating absolute fact that proves how serious that signal was. Within hours, a major, hugely influential billionaire donor publicly put $250 million on the table.
Wait. $250 million.
$250 million. That's not just campaign funding. That's a crazy amount of money. Enough to fund, 3 or 4 full gubernatorial races? But you're saying this wasn't for the usual stuff.
Crucially, no. Not for ads, not for rallies, not for getting out the vote. This money was explicitly and very publicly designated for a constitutional and legal fight.
A legal fight.
A war chest. A war chest dedicated not to winning votes, but to basically tearing open the rule book of the American presidency in a court of law.
So that announcement, that number,
Yeah.
That was the real signal.
It instantly signaled to everyone inside the Beltway, to the lawyers, to the Supreme Court itself, that this challenge, this idea of a third term, is plausible enough to justify a frankly unprecedented financial risk.
And then, just like that, the lawyers show up.
Exactly as predicted. We started seeing top constitutional scholars, really respected figures, even members of Congress, stop whispering about the 22nd Amendment.
The 2-term limit one.
Right. They stopped whispering and started openly debating legal loopholes, constitutional ambiguities, things that were unthinkable just a few years ago.
So the phrase third term, it's not a conspiracy theory anymore. It's out in the open.
It's being discussed with real money, real legal firepower from people like Alan Dershowitz, and real political power right in the halls of Congress. I mean, this isn't a theoretical exercise anymore. The preparation for a constitutional crisis is already happening.
You have never seen this kind of money, law, and political power collide like this. Not in modern American history. And we're here to expose the truth behind that signal.
The system is being forced to react.
Stay with us as we expose the full truth right here on News Focus Podcast. If you want the news they don't want you to hear, hit that subscribe button right now. Okay, let's unpack that core word, prepare. You stressed that he didn't say panic or chaos. For me, for most people watching that, the immediate feeling was, alarm.
Mm-hmm.
So why is that distinction, prepare versus panic, so important to understanding the strategy here?
Because preparation implies you know what's coming. It implies calculation.
Yeah.
If a leader says panic, they're reacting to something they didn't see, an external event. But if they say prepare, they're signaling that they know our institutions, the courts, the laws, all the norms we take for granted are about to be tested.
Tested in a way they might not survive.
They might not survive intact, exactly. It suggests a strategic move, a disruption that is already, baked into the timeline.
So it's a calm warning before everything changes, not an emotional outburst while it's happening. It's almost procedural, like it's step one in a playbook.
Precisely. You don't tell people to prepare for something they've seen before. You tell them to prepare when the very rules you've relied on your whole life are about to stop applying.
Wow.
He was signaling that Americans are about to witness a legal and political fight like nothing before, and that's regardless of the final outcome. The sheer act of starting that fight will be something new.
So it's a mental preparation for the system to be put under just maximum premeditated stress.
A civic, mental, and emotional preparation.
Yes. And that's so different from the past. We're used to him testing boundaries, but it's usually from a rally stage or, an interview.
Where it could be dismissed.
Easily dismissed. As political trolling, as theater. But this came from the Oval Office.
And that is the institutional weight we were talking about. When those words are spoken from the Oval Office, they carry the weight of the presidency itself. They become part of the official record.
And they force a reaction.
They force institutions, especially the Department of Justice and the federal courts, to react. This time, what followed prepare wasn't a bunch of angry tweets.
No, it was $250 million.
And the mobilization of elite constitutional lawyers. When a sitting president signals a shift of this magnitude, the game changes entirely. The words stop being entertainment, they become a strategic launch code.
Right.
Yeah.
Billionaires don't throw around that kind of money because of a joke.
Yeah.
And top scholars don't publish complex legal arguments because of a vibe. Which brings us back to the money. This public announcement of the money as a pressure signal.
We really have to talk about the scale of that $250 million offer from Miriam Addant. She is one of the most sophisticated, most influential donors in the country. Her making that declaration public was not an accident. It was a strategic move designed to be heard in 3 specific places: the media, the legal community, and in the opposition's headquarters.
Okay, but why make it public? I mean, if you want to fund some secret legal war, you do it quietly. You use dark money channels, right? Why the big national announcement?
Because the public announcement is the strategy. It's pure pressure signaling.
Okay, explain that.
Well, power often works by floating an idea that's so big, so audacious, that your opponents panic. And in their panic, they accidentally give the concept credibility just by reacting to it.
So by freaking out, you make it seem real.
You do. By making the offer public, they forced institutions to react instantly. They legitimized the conversation by making it impossible to ignore. It's a show of force. It says the resources for a long, drawn-out constitutional war are already committed.
Wow. So the goal isn't just to have the money, it's to use the announcement of the money as a tactical weapon.
Yes.
You're saying the political cost of just laughing this off went up the second that number hit the news.
Exactly. They are basically telling their opponents, we have the resources to not just file one lawsuit, but to tie up the entire federal judiciary for the next 2 years. We dare you to match this.
And that forces the other side to divert their own money away from, regular campaigning.
Away from traditional campaigning and into emergency litigation preparedness. It's a brilliant, if cynical, move.
And you made the point, and I want to go back to this, that this $250 million is different from a normal campaign war chest. I still need that clarification. What specifically does $250 million buy you in a constitutional fight that it doesn't in a campaign?
Okay, think of it like the difference between buying groceries for your family for a month and funding a major military operation.
Okay.
A campaign war chest buys you voter lists, digital ads, rallies, field offices, the mechanics of winning an election. A constitutional litigation budget buys something totally different.
Which is?
It buys elite legal minds, multi-jurisdictional defense, and most critically, speed.
Speed. How does money buy speed in the courts? They're famously slow.
It buys the ability to launch immediate, high-powered lawsuits in potentially dozens of states at the same time, often within hours of an event.
I see.
When you're challenging election results or constitutional eligibility, timing is everything. You need emergency injunctions.
And for anyone listening who isn't a lawyer, an injunction is basically a court order saying, stop what you're doing right now.
Right, a court order to demand an immediate stop to something, like a state certifying an election. And these are extremely high-stakes legal moves. They required most expensive and specialized constitutional law firms in the country.
And I'm guessing those firms charge a little more than your standard political lawyers.
Exponentially more. You're not paying for a typical civil lawsuit, like a property dispute. You're paying for the constitutional firms whose only focus is the foundational law of the country.
They charge what they want because they're the only ones who could do it.
Their rates are astronomical because they're dealing with the rules of the republic itself. That $250 million covers the retainer fees, the appeals process, expert testimony, and just the sheer number of lawyers required to sustain a legal battle that has to be argued all the way up to the Supreme Court.
It's strategic capital. It's designed to just overwhelm the system.
Overwhelm the judiciary with legal necessity and force an early precedent-setting ruling.
So, is the main goal of this money actually to win the case? Or is it just to maximize the cost and the chaos for the other side, win or lose?
That is the cynical but highly strategic view.
It's less about constitutional success and more about bankrupting the counterattack.
The intent is disruption. If you spend $250 million, that forces your opponents to spend $250 million just defending the rules we all thought were settled. You've successfully weaponized the judiciary.
And even if you lose, you've created enough chaos to make the whole process look questionable to the public.
That's the secondary benefit. The objective is to make the Constitution stop being a static document and start becoming a battlefield.
Okay, this moves us from the high-stakes political game to the cold, hard legal stuff. And this is where we have to talk about Alan Dershowitz. He's central to this because he's a constitutional heavyweight, and he's the one giving this ambiguity some validation.
That's right. I mean, Dershowitz isn't just a pundit on TV. He's one of the most published and, frankly, respected constitutional lawyers of the last 50 years.
And his argument is what matters. It shakes the basic assumption that presidential term limits are settled law.
Completely.
We all think we know the 22nd Amendment.
Yeah.
2 terms, that's it, period. What exactly did he argue that made Washington just stop and listen?
He points out a critical loophole, or, at the very least, a very intentional ambiguity in the precise wording of the 22nd Amendment.
Okay.
The amendment clearly states that no person shall be elected to the office of president more than twice.
Elected, okay.
But he notes that it does not explicitly say someone cannot serve more than twice through the process of constitutional succession.
So the letter of the law limits who you can vote for, but not who can take the office if it's through succession.
Exactly. That distinction between being elected to the office and assuming the office, that is the entire battlefield in constitutional law.
And just for context, the 22nd Amendment came after FDR, right? After he won 4 times.
Correct. The spirit of it was crystal clear. Prevent one person from accumulating power forever. But in trying to write a precise law, the text focused on the mechanism of gaining power, the election, and might have left an accidental backdoor open via succession.
So this isn't just some theory from Reddit. This is a serious legal argument that exploits a specific gap in the text.
It is textualism in action. And Dershowitz is careful. He's not guaranteeing it would work, but he is raising questions that are serious enough to, warrant books, detailed legal prep, and that massive financial commitment we just talked about.
History is made when laws are contested, not when they're clear.
It's made when credible minds find a way to argue that the literal text contradicts what everyone assumed the intent was.
Okay, let's stop dancing around it. Give us the clear step-by-step breakdown of this succession scenario that's being discussed in serious circles.
Okay, and we have to be clear, this is a theoretical, untested scenario. It relies entirely on that very narrow interpretation of the 22nd Amendment.
Understood. Lay it out. Step 1.
Step 1. The former president runs for and is successfully elected as the Vice President of the United States.
Okay. He's on the ticket, but not for president.
Correct. He is elected to a national office, but technically not the office of the president. The argument is the 22nd Amendment doesn't bar him from running for VP.
Got it. The ticket wins. He's sworn in as vice president. Step 2.
Step 2. The president on that ticket, very shortly after the inauguration, we're talking maybe hours or days after being sworn in, resigns from the office.
And that's the moment of political sacrifice.
The crucial moment,
Yeah.
Yes. And then step 3 is the consequence of that resignation.
Which is?
According to the rules of constitutional succession, specifically the 25th Amendment, the vice president automatically and legally assumes the presidency.
So he becomes president without being elected to the office.
He would have become president by operation of law, not by a vote. He would have avoided the 22nd Amendment's restriction on being elected to the office more than twice.
Wait, hold on. That sounds terrifyingly simple, like a piece of legal origami.
Yeah.
But I have to be the skeptic here. Isn't that political suicide for the running mate? I mean, who in their right mind agrees to be a placeholder for a few hours just to trigger a constitutional crisis?
And that is the fundamental, practical, and political challenge. It's a massive one.
Is there any precedent for that? For that level of calculated political sacrifice?
Legally, the path is there. Politically, it's a tightrope over a canyon. There is no direct modern precedent for a president resigning hours after taking the oath just for this purpose. We've seen presidents resign, like Nixon, and we've seen VPs take over, like Ford, but never like this.
The optics alone, a premeditated, instant resignation just to bypass a constitutional limit, would be devastating. I mean, to the perceived legitimacy of the government.
Absolutely. The running mate would have to be someone whose political capital is already low, or, someone who is rewarded with immense power somewhere else. A lifetime appointment, a guaranteed future campaign.
The calculation is that the prize, a third term, is worth the shady way you get there.
That's the calculation. But it's the biggest practical hurdle this legal theory faces. It relies on a level of political cynicism that, while we see it a lot, has never been tested in this specific way.
And if this happens, if the ticket wins and the resignation occurs, You're talking about immediate, unprecedented legal gridlock. The country has never seen anything like it.
Total gridlock. That $250 million immediately goes to work. You'd see lawsuits filed in state after state demanding injunctions, arguing the whole thing is a scam to get around the spirit of the law.
And it would all end up at the Supreme Court.
Fast. Faster than any issue in recent history. The reason people are taking this seriously is because the process itself is designed to unleash chaos and to force a ruling that will set a precedent for generations.
And this is where the legal deep dive really begins. Because it isn't just about the 22nd Amendment. It becomes a true constitutional collision when you bring in the 12th Amendment.
That's the core tension, yes.
This is the legal knot the Supreme Court would have to untangle.
The 12th Amendment governs how we elect the vice president. And it has a crucial clause. It says, a person must be constitutionally eligible to be president to also serve as vice president.
The exact wording is, no person constitutionally ineligible to the office of president shall be eligible to that of vice president.
Correct. So the entire legal fight, everything we're talking about, hinges on how the courts, specifically those 9 justices, define one single loaded word.
Ineligible.
That's the whole game. Does the 22nd Amendment, which stops you from being elected more than twice, make you categorically ineligible to hold the office a third time? Or does it just make you ineligible for the ballot?
And those are not the same thing legally.
Not at all. And the distinction is razor thin, highly technical, and completely up for judicial interpretation.
Help us understand that distinction, because it sounds like splitting hairs, but in law, splitting hairs is the whole point.
Okay, let's try a simple analogy. Think of it like a driver's license. The law might say you're ineligible to take the written test, that's the election, more than twice. That's the 22nd Amendment.
Okay, I'm with you.
But if a family member gives you their car and you get behind the wheel, are you ineligible to operate the vehicle, that is, to hold the office? The textual argument, Dershowitz's side, says, I only violated the rule about the test. I didn't violate the rule about driving once I was legally given the keys.
So if the courts decide the 22nd Amendment only restricts the election, then he wasn't ineligible to hold the office through succession, meaning he could be VP and the whole scenario is possible.
Precisely. This is the textualist view. It's the doctrine that says you must stick strictly to the literal meaning of the words in the law, no matter what you think the intent was.
The text says elected, so that's the only thing it applies to.
Under that school of thought, the 12th Amendment's barrier wouldn't apply.
But there's a powerful counterargument, right? The one that looks at the spirit of the law.
The counterargument, the intentionalist view, would say the 22nd Amendment was fundamentally designed to prevent a person from having a third term, period. Full stop.
They'd argue the whole point was to limit presidential power.
Right. Making someone categorically ineligible to occupy the office after 2 terms, no matter how they got there. And under that interpretation, the 12th Amendment would slam the door shut on the whole vice presidency idea.
So the Supreme Court wouldn't be arguing facts. They'd be arguing about their fundamental judicial philosophy. Textualism versus intentionalism.
And that is exactly what makes this so frightening. The court will be forced to choose which legal philosophy defines the future of presidential power.
The Constitution stops being a rule book and becomes a battlefield.
Where interpretations equal power. The outcome of this ruling goes so far beyond this one election, it will define how future courts treat all constitutional amendments.
And this all lands squarely on 9 justices. There's no historical template for them to look back on.
Zero modern precedent. They can't just reach back to some ruling from the 1950s and say this is settled law. When the 22nd Amendment was ratified in 51, nobody was thinking about this specific succession loophole.
They were just trying to stop another FDR.
They were focused on stopping a 4-term president from being elected. So the court will be defining the outer limits of presidential eligibility from scratch.
And whatever they decide, that becomes the new rule book.
It becomes a constitutional reset point. If they affirm this textualist loophole, every future vice president selection will be viewed through this lens. Future presidents will study and exploit this ruling for decades. It truly transforms the Constitution itself.
And there's the terrifying possibility that the ruling is split, 5-4, on purely ideological lines.
That's a critical risk. A 5-4 ruling, especially one that enables a scenario that most people see as violating the spirit of the law, would create an unprecedented crisis of legitimacy for the Supreme Court.
The question becomes, does the public accept the rule of law when that law looks like a cynical loophole?
That's the test. The mental preparation is about being ready for the possibility of the final answer to this huge question might be seen not as justice, but as a political victory decided by a single vote.
And if the court sides with the textualists, it validates the whole strategy. It proves that money, that $250 million, can be used to strategically transform foundational law.
It becomes the blueprint. They would have proven that constitutional interpretation is a product that can be purchased. Not the decision itself, but the immense legal pressure required to force the court to even confront the ambiguity.
So while this huge legal argument is underway, Congress isn't just sitting back and watching.
No, and that's the next crucial layer. We saw Representative Andy Ogles introduce a proposal to amend the Constitution to allow presidents to serve 3 non-consecutive terms.
That non-consecutive detail is just so central. I mean, why add that specific language? It's too specific.
Because that language is surgically tailored to one single individual in modern political history, Donald Trump.
Right.
And by introducing that proposal, even though it has almost no chance of passing, Congress is doing 2 highly strategic things.
First, it normalizes the conversation.
Exactly. They are making a previously taboo idea a legitimate political position. Once the language is written down, debated on the floor, it stops being a fringe legal theory. They're making it okay to talk about rewriting the 22nd Amendment.
And second, it's a political signal to the courts, isn't it?
It absolutely is. It's staking out political territory. It tells the Supreme Court that a big chunk of the legislative branch already thinks the existing law is unclear enough to need a formal change.
It gives them legal cover.
It does. It says, we are already preparing a legislative solution which proves the law is ambiguous.
But constitutional amendments are almost impossible to pass. You need 2/3 of the House and Senate, 3/4 of the states. It's a brutal process.
The difficulty of passing it today is irrelevant to the strategy. The goal isn't to pass the amendment now. The goal is to build a political coalition that insists the existing structure is broken.
It's a long-term fight.
They're planting the seeds. They're proving the issue has legislative viability. It's a multi-front constitutional attack.
So even if the courts say no to the loophole, Congress has a pressure point to keep the question alive forever.
It's redundancy in constitutional strategy. It ensures the conversation doesn't die. The question of term limits has been publicly reopened.
So let's bring this back to that first warning. Prepare. Even if all these legal avenues fail, what is the disruption we're supposed to be preparing for?
We are preparing for the process itself. Americans, we're conditioned to expect clean, clear outcomes in our politics.
Right, a winner and a loser.
And this fight, no matter who wins, would be a rejection of that. It would unleash legal chaos, nonstop constitutional arguments on a 24-hour news loop. Emergency injunctions, hearings, protests. It tears at the perceived legitimacy of every institution involved.
It's the ultimate stress test on the American system.
Yeah.
The question isn't just can the system survive, but can the country survive the public fight over its own rulebook?
That's the stress test. He wasn't necessarily telling people to pick a side. He was telling them not to be blindsided when the courts are overwhelmed and Congress is debating amendments that were off limits for 70 years.
And once that door is open,
The country doesn't simply go back to normal even if the fight is lost. The system itself will have been permanently changed just by being forced to debate its outer limits of power in the open.
and the media's reaction proves that. They didn't laugh it off. They panicked.
Mm-hmm.
Wall-to-wall coverage, alarmist headlines. Because the possibility of radical unpredictability is the highest form of political risk.
The media, the political elite, the financial markets, they're all built on predictability. Term limits are predictable. Succession is predictable. What the prepare message introduced was radical uncertainty.
And the money to sustain that uncertainty for years.
And that's the real source of institutional fear. The system being forced to publicly defend rules it assumed would never be challenged again.
So the panic isn't proof the plan will succeed. It's proof of the perceived high-level risk to the whole system.
And once fear enters the system, mistakes follow and legitimacy cracks. What Americans are truly being asked to prepare for is a massive public test of whether our institutions can handle ambiguity without breaking.
We're watching the next definition of presidential power being written in real time.
That's the chilling summary. The preparation isn't just about a potential third term. It's a civic, mental, and emotional preparation for a public test of American institutional assumptions. Even if the court strikes this down, the country won't just go back to normal. The fact that this much money was raised, that a major lawyer proposed it, that Congress drafted language, it means the system has been permanently marked. The rulebook is no longer assumed to be unbreakable.
That's the reality we're facing. This idea, once it's out there, changes the structural integrity of the presidency forever, win or lose. But I want to know what you think. When facing the collision of the 12th and 22nd Amendments, should the Supreme Court adopt the literal textual reading of the law regarding election versus service, or should it adhere to the clear spirit and historical intent of the amendment, which was limiting the accumulation of presidential power? Let us know your opinion in the comments below. We read every single one. I'm Alex.
And I'm Sophia. Thanks for listening to News Focus.